Yes, um, tama yung mga na-mention ni Russell. Mapapansin nyo, our first word, we have poets, we have critic, we have enlightenment, we have Alexander Pope. So all those terms like pride, all those terms that we mentioned, those will be discussed this afternoon. So these are the objectives of our discussion for this afternoon. So we'll be discussing the historical development of the Age of Enlightenment. So kasi nga 'di ba, pag pinag-aaralan yung literature, na-mention na natin 'to paulit-ulit, we have classical, medieval, and then we skip sa medieval kasi sakop na rin siya ng influence ng classical period kaya we don't need to discuss further on the medieval period as far as literary criticism is concerned. And then last meeting we discussed of the Renaissance period, si si Philip Sidney. Okay? And next is the background of Pope, Alexander Pope, and we'll be discussing Neoclassicism. Kung sa Renaissance, we focus on humanism, the importance or the influence of the philosophy, humanism, in the literary criticism. This time, we'll be discussing Neoclassicism on this period. And the general principles to be followed for a good criticism, the moral and psychological causes of bad criticism, and the moral qualities and virtues inherent in the would-be critic. So these are the things according to Alexander Pope. So pag-aaralan natin ng pahapyaw, not too much details on it, yung kanyang essay on criticism. Although meron din naman siyang essay on man. Pero ang mas pinag-aaralan natin ngayon, since we're talking of criticism, literary criticism, is his work entitled Essay on Men, Essay on Criticism. Okay, so the historical development of the age of enlightenment. Ano ba nangyari during the enlightenment period? Balikan natin ito kasi yung mga kasaysayan ay may impluwensya sa sa humanities in general, sa arts, sa philosophy, sa literature in general. May mga kinalaman yan. Katulad din nung diniscuss natin yung classical tsaka renaissance na malaking aspeto ang kasaysayan para maimpluwensyahan yung literature. And tantamount to that is also the literary criticism. The Age of Enlightenment ay tinatawag rin nating the Age of Reason. Kung maaalala ninyo yung sinabi sa classical period na may dalawang mahalagang importante during the classical period. We have Oratio and Ratio. Oratio and Ratio. Sino nakakatanda ko anong English translation ng Oratio tsaka Ratio? Det, pasarangan yung yung gate natin diyan o nakabukas. Anyone? Ano yung English translation ng ratio tsaka Oratio? So na-mention doon sa classical period natin that there are two important things during the classical period. We have Oratio and Ratio. Anyone? Kung nakakatanda, ano ibig sabihin ng ratio tsaka Oratio in English? Yes, Paula. Yes. Yes, reason. Very good. So again, Oratio means speech. Okay, yes, tama si Kuya Lu and Lem, ratio is reason, logic and reason, no? It's speech and reason. Oratio, oratical. Okay? So kaya siya ay speech and reason. So those are the two important things during the classical period. And ratio or reason is still observed up to the Enlightenment period. So nakita talaga natin yung impact or yung influence ng classical period. So the Age of Reason was a philosophical, yung Neoclassicism pa lang, makikita nyo na philosophical. Mamaya, ang atake uli natin dito ay may pagka-philosophical kasi may pagka-philosopher din si Alexander Pope. Cultural and intellectual movement. Tingnan natin kung ano yung naging literary movement during the Neoclassical period. Kung yung panahon ni Philip Sidney, meron silang movement May literary movement silang tinatawag na kung saan doon nila bumubuo sila ng tamang istruktura ng isang tula. Kaya si Philip Sidney ay merong produce na isang libro, yung kanyang Defense of Poetry. So doon, base doon sa mga napag-usapan nila kasi may grupo sila eh, yung literary movement nila. Ngayon, tingnan natin kung ano yung intellectual movement sa panahon ng Age of Enlightenment. So pag pinag-usapan natin ang Enlightenment period, it is from 17th and 18th century. So pansinin niyo 'di ba, during the classical period, that's the establishment, that is the establishment of the society. Parang totally nagkaroon na ng establish na yung society. Sa medieval period, medyo nagkaroon ng kasiraan sa society. And then sa rebirth, during the Renaissance period, inayos kung ano man yung nasira during the medieval period. Ngayon, ano naman kaya yung pinakang mahalagang contribution ng Enlightenment period? Bakit ba siya tinawag na Enlightenment? Ano ba yung nakapag-enlighten na nagbigay sa kanila ng kaliwanagan? Kaliwanagan. Yun yung Tagalog ng Enlightenment. Okay? So, uh, in the age of enlightenment or the age of reason, the ideas of man, reason, and nature were synthesized into a conception of the world. Classical period, balikan natin, 'di ba, nature ang napakahalaga sa nature. When we talk of nature, we're not pertaining to the environment, ha. We're not pertaining to the natural resources alone. When we talk of nature, we are pertaining to the physical world itself, the things that are perceived by our senses. Nakikita natin, that is part of the nature. Okay? So, dito sa Age of Enlightenment, pinagsama nila yung ano ba yung idea ng tao, ideas of man, yung nalalaman ng tao. When we talk about ideas of man, ano ba yung nalalaman ng tao? Of course, yung nalalaman mo is different from a reason. Okay? It's different from a reason. Okay? So, and the nature. So they synthesize this. This period of intellectual curiosity and experimentation was based on an abiding faith in the power of human reason to unlock the mysteries of nature and society. So mamaya titingnan natin kung ano ba yung sinasabi niyang human reason that unlocks the mystery of nature and society. Ano bang meron sa humanities that has to be unlocked? Okay? Sa kung babalikan natin yung Renaissance period, maraming mga uh, sinabi si Philip Sidney about the humanities, about human. Kaya nga sila 'di ba ay ang kanilang uh, philosophical call this foundation is humanism. Okay? Yung kahalagahan ng tao, yung purpose of the existence of human being, the significance of the existence of human being, why human being lives, what human being can do. May pagka humanism yon, humanist. And dito, human reason ang pinag-uusapan. Pag pinag-usapan natin yung reason, we're talking of the mind, we're talking of the logic. Okay. So, the main purpose of the Enlightenment period, kaliwanagan sa pag-iisip. Yun tatandaan nyo, Enlightenment period, kaliwanagan sa pag-iisip. What enlightened the humanities? Okay, ito yan. So, the main purpose was to make man understand the universe and improve his own condition. So, napakahalaga nung during the Enlightenment period is to, may pagka-humanism, pero ang pinakang focus niya is maunawaan mismo ng tao, siya mismo as an individual. Hindi mo unawain yung hindi katulad sa humanism in general yung pagtingin mo. Dito as an individual, as a human being, you need to understand the universe, and when we talk of the universe, it is the things that are surrounding you. We're not pertaining to what is mentioned sa science na universe, you know what I mean, the stars, the moon, etc. Hindi yon. When we talk of the universe, we are pertaining to to things that are surrounding an individual. Okay? So, kapag nakita ng tao yung paligid niya, malalaman niya kung ano ba siya sa mundo. Okay? Ano ba yung purpose ko as an individual? Kaya natin pwedeng i-angkla yung enlightenment. Kumbaga, you situate yourself in that particular scenario, particular situation that is going on around you. And then from that is you have to realize what is my purpose. Okay? Parang yun yung gustong i-enlighten ng mga writers ng time na yun. Ito yung gustong ipaunawa ng ng mga writers ng mga panahon yun. Kaya nga naisulat ni Alexander Pope yung Essay on Man. Sabi niya nga, 'di ba? To err is human, to love is divine. Because kapag lagi mo i-stress yung sarili mo, lagi mo iniisip na mali ako, lagi mo iniisip yung sarili na laging mali ako. Of course, may stress ka, made-depress ka. Pero kapag inunawa mo yung sitwasyon kung bakit ka nagkakamali, you will be realizing na, oh, it's human nature to commit mistakes. Okay? Kaya talagang ito yung gusto nilang i-revolutionize, ito yung gusto nilang ipahiwatig sa mga sangkatauhan ng time na yon, yung maliwanagan yung mga tao. Kasi nga 'di ba, ang 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 layo ng pinanggalingan nila. Nagsimula ka sa classical period, nagkaroon ng war, ng political turmoils, nagkaroon ng reverse. So what will you expect sa mga tao? Ang mga tao ay lito, 'di ba? So, parang ngayong pandemya na ang daming nangyayari sa atin. Mga tao ay kung ano na mga naiisip sa pangyayari, nagkakaroon ng anxiety, nagkakaroon ng depression, like you sa inyo mga students, 'di ba? Sa sobrang dami ng mga workloads ninyo, nahihirapan na rin kayo to think, ano bang dapat kong gawin? Ano bang uunahin ko? So, parang gano'n yung nangyari nung time na yun na gusto nilang ipaunawa sa mga tao na, may importance, may kahalagahan yung pagtingin mo ng malawakan sa senaryo, sa sitwasyon para mas maunawaan mo yung sitwasyon and eventually maunawaan mo yung sarili mo. Nakukuha ba yung nais kong ipunto rito? Kaya ito yung ibig sabihin nung enlightenment, yung kaliwanagan mo sa sarili mo. Dapat parang unawain mo muna kung ano yung nasa paligid mo, and then from that, once you already immerse yourself on the surroundings, in your universe, you will be realizing, okay, kaya ko pala 'to na-experience. Kaya pala namin na-experience. So, ito yung sinasabi nating improve his own condition through reason and freedom. Reason. So, it's human nature na tayo mismo, meron tayong tinatawag na cognitive dissonance. Sa psychology yan. Kung tawagin natin ay cognitive dissonance. Yung parang, ah, kapag meron kang, parang rini-reverse psychology mo yung sarili mo dun. Halimbawa, ganito. May binili ka na magandang damit na ang price ay 200 pesos. Pagdating mo doon sa kabilang tindahan, meron ka nakitang parehong damit na maganda yung quality, pero ang presyo 150 pesos. Nang hinayang ka, dapat pala tumingin pa ako doon. Ngayon, you try to convince yourself na, okay, mas ano to, kahit pa mas mahal to ng 200 pesos, mukhang branded naman. Parang you're convincing yourself na ganun. So, doon pala nagre-reason out ka na sa sarili mo eh. Okay? So, yun tatawag natin cognitive dissonance na ma-apply rin naman natin sa psychology. Parang ganun yung gusto kong sabihin din dito sa sa Enlightenment period, yung magkakaroon ng kaliwanagan yung mga tao sa mga nangyayari sa kanila para mas maunawaan din nila yung kanilang condition, yung sarili nila. Okay? So, reasoning and enlightenment were not peculiar to the 18th century. Hindi siya masyadong uh, pinag-uusapan or mas pero nandun yung mga kilalang tao like yung mga grupo nila Alexander Pope, mga writers na sulat sila ng sulat about about humanities. So its roots go back far further during the ancient period. Kaya halos lahat naman uh, ang pinakang basihan, even the Renaissance period nga, 'di ba, nakita natin yung impluwensya ni Plato tsaka ni Aristotle doon sa stand ni Philip Sidney sa kanyang defense of poetry. Kita natin doon yung hinimay-himay natin yung points ni Philip Sidney na, oh, may pagka-Plato, may pagka-Aristotle yung kanyang sinabi. So, kaya we don't wonder why its roots go back far further during the ancient Greek. Okay, so ancient Greek philosophers were the first who had explored the power of mind. Let's give the credit to Socrates, to Plato, and Aristotle na talaga silang mga nag-aral, nagpaliwanag ng kalagayang pantao at kalagayang panlipunan nung panahong iyon. Okay, dito tingnan. Okay, then they had discovered the order of nature and the manner of work of mind. Okay, kaya nga, di ba, reasoning. Okay, so, and one of the 18th century poets who were immensely under the influence of ancient cultures is Alexander Pope, and it is mirrored in his work, which is the essay on criticism. So nagsulat siya about literary criticism. Pag-aralan natin kung ano ba yung nilalaman noong literary criticism. Okay? So, papakilala ko sa inyo si Alexander Pope. Kaya yan siya. So, Alexander Pope was born on May 21st, 1688 to a wealthy Catholic linen merchant. Okay, so yan yung family background niya. Because Catholics were forbidden to hold office, practice their religion, attend public schools, or live within 10 miles of London, Pope grew up in nearby Windsor Forest and was mostly self-taught. His education supplemented by study with private tutors or priests. Question, kung kayo yung nakinig talaga ng discussion ko ng Renaissance period, bakit sa tingin nyo ay merong pinoforbid ang mga Catholics during the Enlightenment period? So, ito nga, ang nangyari na-establish ang Protestantism at sila yung mas nakilala nung time na yon. Okay? Kaya sila yung parang naghari-harian yung period na yon. So, kaya halos lahat ng mga Catholics doon is parang nadi-discriminate sila. Kaya itong si Alexander Pope ay self-taught at ang kanyang mga tutors ay mga priest. So, parang kayo, self-taught. Ayan. So, dati pa lang may module na, di ba? So, historical speaking, dati pa lang may modular type na. Itong si Alexander Pope siguro, modular ang ginamit nito. Okay, so yun yung reason. Okay? Ang nangunguna kasi yun, nag-immerse kasi nung time na yun, talagang nangunguna mga Protestantism. Kaya at some point, na-discriminate. It was in England. Na-discriminate ang mga Catholics that time. Okay? So at the age of 12, Alexander Pope contracted spinal tuberculosis, which left him with permanent physical disabilities. So imagine niyo kapag meron siyang spinal tuberculosis, talagang kuba siya. Okay? So he never grew taller than 4.5 feet. 4.5 feet. He was hunchbacked. Okay? So kuba and required daily care throughout adulthood. Pero nga, dahil nga likas na matalino si Alexander Pope, walang pipigil at pipigil sa kanya. He may be physically disabled, pero yung kanyang utak is sharp. Okay? His irascible nature and popularity in the press are often attributed to three factors. Yung time na yon, nagsisimula lang magsulat si Alexander Pope. Okay, marami na siyang mga ito yung mga reasons kung bakit hindi siya naging popular ng time niya. Una, his membership in a religious minority. So, mga Catholic is part of the minorities during that time. Okay? Kasi nga halos ay naswayed ng Protestantism ni Martin Luther. his physical infirmity, yung kanyang pagiging disabled yung time na yun. His exclusion from formal education. Kasi nga, nag-aaral lang siya, self-taught, at halos lahat ay modular type. Si, si Alexander Pope. At ang mga nagtuturo lang sa kanya ay mga private tutors who are mga priest. Kaya siguro, yung mga priest na yun, malaki yung impluensya dun sa philosophical underpinnings ni Alexander Pope. Di ba? Pope na rin siya, nakadikit pa rin sa kanyang pangalang Pope. Hindi naman siya Pope. Okay? So, Catholic talaga yung kanyang affiliation. Okay? Okay, so Pope was bright, precocious, and determined, and by his teens was writing accomplished verse, but he was not that popular. He was acknowledged as the master of the heroic couplet and one of the primary tastemakers of the Augustan age. Mamaya papaliwanag ko sa inyo kung bakit nakapasok dyan ang Augustan age. Okay? Kasi ang Enlightenment period nahati sa tatlo yan eh. Okay? Sa Augustan age. He was a central figure in the Neoclassical movement of the early 18th century. Okay? Ito yung kanilang literary movement during the 18th century. And we will be having a separate discussion of what Neoclassical is. Among his famous works are the following, yung The Rape of the Lock in 1714, which derides elite society, and his two famous works, ito yung kilala talaga, An Essay on Criticism in 1711 and An Essay on Man in 1733 to 34. So which articulate many of the central tenets of 18th century aesthetic and moral philosophy. So yan. Okay, so what happens during the neoclassical literature? During the period of neoclassical period. So neo, which means new, and then we have classical. Classical, 'di ba? Pag sinabi ng classical period, ang isip agad natin is it's the ancient Greeks, the ancient Greece and the ancient Roman. So pag pinagsabi natin classical, sila agad 'yon. Pero rito, we attach the word new. Ibig sabihin, ito ang bagong classic. So yun yung gusto nilang iparating. Ito yung bagong classic ngayon. So let's try to revitalize yung ah, classical period. Ito ang bago. Yan yung gustong iparating nung time ni Alexander Pope. So kaya ang neoclassical, it is always associated with period of enlightenment, the age of reason, and the era of logic. Literature of this age was concerned how the human distinguish between right and wrong. Kasi nga 'di ba, uh, neoclassical literature is characterized by order, accuracy, and structure. So, tingnan natin ano ba yung mga nausong na buong mga literary forms yung time na yon. Kung classical period, poetry, dramatic poetry, narrative poetry, ah lyrical. Nung Renaissance period, we have poetry and drama categorized as tragedy and comedy. Ngayon, ano kaya yung na-introduce na new forms of literature? At bakit nila nasabing by order, accuracy, and structure? So before we go on further with that, so this I mentioned to you a while ago that there are three stages of the neoclassical period. Ito yung nahati sa tatlo ang neoclassical period. The Restoration period, the Augustan period, and the Age of Johnson. So dito sa Restoration period, British throne restored from Puritans domination in England. Pag pinag-usapan natin mga Puritans, ito yung mga grupo nila uh, hindi 'to yung mga puritang katulad natin, yung mga Puritans, domination in ito yung mga Protestants. Ito yung, ah, teachings ng mga Protestants. So, ang tawag nila doon sa specific period na yon under the Restoration period is under that period is, Restoration period. Okay, kasi, ah naibalik na yung British throne after 'di bang maging dominant ang mga ah, Puritans, yung Protestantism during the time. So na-restore na sa British throne. Kasi naman kaya bumagsak ng British throne kasi internally sila-sila rin mismo sa loob ng kanilang ng grupo nila, organization nila or sa monarch nila may mga internal problems. Kaya talagang that affects them as well. Okay? So that's what we call the restoration period. Then we have the Augustan period, the reign of Emperor Augustus. Ito yung kasabay na ang ng ng Romans. Ayan. Yes, very good. Si Roman Emperor Augustus is Caesar Augustus. Yes, sila yon. During the Augustan period. Salamat sino nagsabi noon. Si Lemuel ata o si Lemuel o si Lou. Okay, so it's the reign of Emperor Augustus. So kumbaga tinawag nila yung time na yon as the Augustan period in honor of the reign of Emperor Augustus. The Age of Johnson. Ito naman yung popularity ni Samuel Johnson. So in honor of the popularity of Samuel Johnson, I'm sure that you have heard of the name Samuel Johnson in literature. So he had also contributed a lot during the Neoclassical period. And in order for them to categorize yung time niya, so pinakalan sa kanya is the Age of Johnson. So ito na yung mga nabuong literature yung time na yon. Okay, so balikan na classical, we have poetry. Lyrical, paulit-ulit ako ano. Lyrical, pag nakalimutan niyo pa naman to, narrative, dramatic, classical period. Renaissance period, poetry and drama. Si drama categorized as tragedy and comedy. And during the uh, this period, the Enlightenment period, some popular types of literature include the following. We have the parody. Ayan. Essays, mga satire, letters, fables, melodrama, and rhyming with couplets. Of course, kay Alexander Pope, ina-attribute ang couplets during the Enlightenment period. Siya talaga yung nag-perfect noong couplet na yon as inspired by the previous poets during his time. And the dominance of French and classical influences on poetry and drama. Of course, malaki talaga impluwensya ng classical period sa poetry and drama. We don't have a drama that we are studying right now if it's not because of how the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans delved into developing or improving this form of literature, even in poetry. Kaya nga, up to this time, mga perennial sila, perennial, panghabang buhay, pinag-aaralan up to now, despite that they were centuries ago. Um, Isa sa mga influence ng classic is of course, literature continued to appeal to heroic ideals of love and honor. Heroic ideals of love and honor. So sa medieval period, naging uso yung kwento ng mga chivalry, particularly on stage in heroic tragedy. Okay, so ito yung mga kilalang mga writers yung time na yon. Oops. So we have John Dryden. He was the most influential writer of the Restoration period, si John Dryden. And then we have John Milton. So siya yung nagpauso ng mga prose style, like witty, urban conversation, and less like the intricate, the rhetorical style of previous writers like John Donne. Okay? So sila to, si John Milton and John Dryden. Gusto ang pangalan John yung time na yan. Then we have John Donne. Yung favorite kong tula niya is about yung Death Be Not Proud. And then we also have Samuel Johnson. He was the literary dictator of his age, though he was not its greatest writer. He was not the greatest writer at the time. But Johnson's own style is often condemned as ponderous and verbose, and he could write in easy and direct style when he chose. Okay. Kaya siguro mas naging kilala si Samuel Johnson yung time na yun. And of course, hindi naman sila ang bida rito sa kwento natin. Ang bida rito sa kwento natin ay si Alexander Pope. Okay, so he was the most significant figure in poetry during the Augustan period. His witty couplets were often quoted and used as axioms. Axioms. Kaya ngayong, to err is human, to love is divine. Di ba? Siya yung nagsabi ng, tao lang kami, nagkakamali din. Ayan. Okay, so Pope took issue with other authors about what should be considered the proper subjects and nature of poetic expressions. Kasi nga being part of a literary movement during this his time, so they have really um, developed a a literary style. So in one of the works of Alexander Pope, diniscuss niya tong mga to doon sa kanyang essay on criticism. By the way, essay ang pangalan niya, ang title, pero hindi talaga siya essay ha. Ewan ko ba sa trip di ko alam kung ano yung pinanggagalingan ni Samuel Johnson, ni Alexander Pope kung bakit niya tinawag itong essay on criticism. But actually, it is not an essay, it is a poetry. It's a poem. Tula siya. Okay? Title niya lang is essay. So, one of the lines, ito yung pinakang isa sa mga mababasa natin doon sa kanya. Sabi niya rito, "'Tis hard to say if greater want of skill appear in writing or in judging ill. But of the two, less dangerous is the offense, to tire our patience than mislead our sense." Yan. Skill, ill, offense, sense. So, that's an example of the line from the essay on criticism. And I highlighted there three. Want of skill, less dangerous is the offense, and mislead our senses. Bakit kanya nasabi na dangerous daw? Ano ba yung tinutukoy niyang dangerous doon? Ano kaya yung tinutukoy niya doon na mislead our sense? Yung parang kapag ah, may sinabi sa atin, sino ba yung nagmi-mislead sa ating pag-iisip? So tingnan natin kung ano yung gustong sabihin dito ni ni tawag rito ni Alexander Pope. Oo, pulbo si Johnson kasi sa kanya nanggaling yung Johnson and Johnson. Okay, so let's have the again, these are the general principles to be followed for a good criticism. This is based on the essay on criticism. So hihimay-himayin natin yung nilalaman ng essay on criticism. So as the speaker of the poem, Pope discusses that bad critics do more harm to people than bad poets. Issue ng critics. 'Di ba? Pag sabing critics, puro mali na lang ang sinasabi, but which in fact it's not. The purpose is of the critics are to determine which are the things that has to be improved, has to be corrected, parang gano'n. So, parang it's constructive. That's the main purpose of criticism. Pero sabi ni Pope, ni Alexander Pope, bad critics do more harm to people than bad poets. Yan. Okay? So ito yan. Sige. Bad poets might tire people's patience. However, bad critics mislead people's sense. Ito yung sinasabi ni Alexander Pope dito sa line na, to tire our patience then mislead our sense. Okay? So, parang it's okay to tire our patience daw. This is based on this is pertaining to the poet. Ang mislead our sense, it is pertaining to bad critics. Okay? Tire our patience has something to do with the bad poets. Uh, mislead our sense is pertaining to the bad critics. Good criticism for Pope means not determining the value of a work but the meaning of the work. Yan. Ah, ano bang nilalaman noong literary works? Ano ba yung mensahe na gusto niyang banggitin? Okay? Yun yung gustong patunguhan ni Pope. When critics are not able to judge, they start to criticize both the poem and the poet and mislead people's sense. Ayan, parang tawag dito yung fallacy where you're already attacking the person ad hominem. 'Di ba ad hominem na yung fallacy niya. Tama, ad hominem, no, attacking the person. Okay, dahil hindi mo gusto yung isang gawa niya, parang entirely hindi mo na rin gusto. Pag ikaw ang critic, parang pinapamukha mo na, okay, itong poet na 'to, it's he's not that good. So, parang it mislead people says na parang, o lahat na ba talaga ng ginawa niya hindi gano'n kaganda. Having an innate ability to judge does not mean that the one might be a critic. Yan. Pero, bakit natin sinabi na ah, we have all the ability to judge, but that all of us can be considered as a critic. So, hindi porke meron tayong opinion, ah, we can already consider that as a form of criticism because criticism requires reasoning. Okay? Age of reason to eh. So, bakit mo nasabing maganda o hindi maganda ang isang literary works? Okay? You make judgment. Teka lang. Doon ka na magsaing may sa ano, sa kabila. Okay? So, a critic should have a true taste and both should cultivate their talents through education. So, para kay Alexander Pope, dapat aral ka. When you talk of education, it does not necessarily mean that you are able to enter school, nakatapos ka ng pag-aaral. When we talk of education here, as far as Alexander Pope is concerned, is you are a learned individual. Nagbabasa ka, nakakaunawa ka sa mga bagay-bagay, mga pangyayari sa paligid mo. Yun yung parang education for Alexander Pope. It doesn't necessarily mean na you enroll in an academe, you finish a degree. It's not that. Although it is part of marami naka-graduate pero walang education, tandaan niyo 'yan. Maraming wala sa eskwelahan pero they behave like they are more educated than those who are in school. So, Pope talks about the critics who deeply read and learn the ancient rules on the matter of critics. So, like other neoclassical literary critics, Pope believes that poets and literary critics should be acquainted with classical works of art and imitate them. So, para kay Pope, napakahalaga pa rin na balik at balikan na natin. Although neoclassical sila, they would like to establish the new trend in literature, kaya neoclassical. They would like to establish a new trend in literature. But according kay Alexander Pope, we should not left behind the contribution of the classic period, the literature during the classical period, and apply it. Parang si ano rin 'to, parang kay Philip Sidney na wag nating kalimutan yung nasa classical period din. So, nandun pa rin kay Alexander Pope na sabi niya na pag-aralan pa rin natin yung ancient period. Doon at doon ma-replenish at ating mas mapaganda pa yung ating pagsusulat. Yan daw. The critic should know the classical theory of life, the perspective of the time, religion, culture, ethnic values. He should follow the way the ancient used to judge and imitate them. The classic texts are, like nature, a standard and a guide. The critic should follow the objectivity and flexibility of their predecessors like Aristotle, Longinus, and Horace. Okay? So, kung ano man yung mga teachings during the ancient periods, i-apply natin hanggang ngayon. So, it's same with kung ano yung estilo nila sa pagsusulat, pwede pa rin naman nating i-apply ngayon. In such a way na yung philosophical underleanings nandun pa rin naman. At the mere fact na Age of Reason tsaka Era of Logic ang Neoclassical Period, hindi mo talaga sa kanila mase-separate na hindi sila naimpluwensyahan ng classical period. Talaga at talagang maimpluwensya sina Aristotle, si Plato, si Longinus, tsaka si Horace yung time na yun. Longinus and Horace between medieval and underlying the necessity of following and imitating the ancient Greeks and Romans, Pope exemplifies one of the neoclassical features. Okay, ano ba yung mga nilalaman ng neoclassical features na to? We have the humanistic learning, influensya rin ng Renaissance. Kumbaga parang nangyayari lang dagdag sila ng dagdag hanggang sa ma mas ma-replenish nila yung kanilang literary standard ng time na yan. Okay? Okay, since particular naman na kayo sa humanistic learning, hindi na natin i-discuss further yun. Okay, so next is another guidelines according kay Alexander Pope in order for us to give criticism is follow the nature. Okay? Mm, na-mention ko na sa inyo kanina kung ano ibig sabihin ng nature, 'di ba? It is not something to do with the with the natural resources or what. It has something to do with the things that are surrounding us. Could be your family, could be your friends, the society itself, could be the people around you. Okay, it's part of the nature. So Pope, like other neoclassical poet, is especially conscious of nature, which is unchanged, general, permanent, righteous, and the representative of the best. For this reason, nature is the universal source of aesthetic pleasure and a basic rule to be followed by critics. Everything in the nature is in its perfect shape. Yan. So kung ano rin yung nasa paligid natin, ah dun yun yung pagbasehan natin kung ano man yung let's say if you're a poet, look at the things that around you, surrounding you. And then from there, and this is Enlightenment period, once you already know the things that are surrounding you, you you realize as an individual your existence, the purpose of your existence as an individual. May pagka humanistic learning tayo dyan. Okay? So, ayun yung tinutukoy nating principles to be followed for a good criticism. Balikan natin. Una, uh, as the speaker of the poem, Pope discussed that bad critics do more harm to people than bad poets. Pangalawa, uh, consider pa rin natin yung natutunan natin during the ancient time, during the classical period. At pangatlo, follow the nature. Okay? So kung ano yung nasa paligid mo, yun ang tingnan mo, pag-aralan mo, pangit man o maganda yung nakikita mo sa nature mo, uh, you need to get something from it, no matter how good or bad the things that are surrounding you. Okay? So, doon nila binabase yung kanilang mga literary works. Yun yung movement, neoclassical movement na gustong iparating ni Alexander Pope sa mga writers ng panahon yun. Okay? So, the moral and psychological causes of bad criticism. Bakit ba mayroong mga bad criticism? Okay. Pride. Na-mention ko na to kanina, 'di ba, yung sa ating activity pride. Ito yung is pride the never falling vice of fools. Isa to sa mga line doon sa Essay and Criticism, sinabi yan ni Alexander Pope. Never falling vice of fools. Hindi raw talaga mawawala at mawawala sa tao yung pride. So dahil sa pride daw, nagkakaroon ng bad criticism. Okay? So Pope starts with pride, which is the biggest fall on criticism. So the reason of all mistakes and misleads are the result of the pride. Kasi kasi hodang masaktan mo na yung kabila because of what you had written. It's still that is affecting bad criticism. So when he talks about the bad critics mislead people's sense is dangerous and harmful, he actually means the wrong direction of the critic because of pride. Okay? So yung pride daw ng critic minsan ang nakakaapekto kung bakit pangit yung kanyang kritisismo doon sa isang literary work. So, sinabi ni Pope, pride is the most dangerous sin in the seven deadly sins. Therefore, it has negative, bad effect on person's judgment. Okay? Pride. Yung hindi mo matanggap na may mas may magaling sa iyo, hindi mo matanggap na mas hindi mo matanggap na tinatama ka, 'di ba? It's a pride. Then yung envy, yung inggit, isa pa rin daw 'yon sa mga nakakapekto sa bad criticism. So sabi ni Alexander Pope, envy will merit as its shade pursue. So Pope explained that envy is like a shadow for the one possesses a wit. Moreover, he points out that one's possession of wit should not be a reason for others to envy. Okay? So, maliwanag naman yung sinabi diyan na huwag kang mainggit dahil naiinggit ka dun sa ginawa ng tao na mas maganda kaysa sa'yo, sisiraan mo na. Bibigyan mo na ng pangit na kritisismo. Dahil merong magandang kritisismo, may pangit na kritisismo. Pope thinks that, okay, meron atang nagko-comment. Let's acknowledge. Okay, so let's acknowledge yung sinabi ni Kuya Lou. To become a critic, one must have a competent set of ideals and unbiased. That's true. Pero yung pagiging bias, hindi maiiwasan yun sa literary criticism. Kaya nga 'di ba, we're always finding ways in order for us to still be objective in a way na will not be um, overly giving our own sides. Pinapaliwanag natin, gina-justify natin kung bakit natin nasabi yon. So just to at least maging fair tayo doon sa binibigyan natin ng criticism. Okay? Um, Sabi ni Jeremy, judging is within the appearance without in-depth analysis. Yes, tama yon. Sinabihan mo agad na ang tsaka ni Jeremy. Because it's only just your impression, kumbaga, unang kita mo pa lang sa taang yun. Unlike critic that uses certain rule in analyzing what's beyond. Right. Okay. Pope thinks that critics who have abundant wit are the... Oops, teka lang. Pope thinks that the critics who have abundant wit are the inevitable target of the others who have not, of course. Kaya di ba may kasabihan tayo, kapag, ano yan, kapag hutok sa bunga ang isang puno, ang tawag doon, ano yung exact na kasabihan, kapag hutok sa bunga yung puno, binabato ng ano yung exact line doon? Di ba may ganun? Parang ganun yung message eh. Yung kapag hutok sa bunga yung isang puno, binabato ka para bumagsak yung bunga. It's inggit. Hitik eh. Kapag hitik sa bunga. Oh, ayun, parang ganun yung konsepto. Diba pag, halimbawa, dito sa time nila, Pope, for sure. Kasi nga, di ba si Alexander Pope, hindi naman siya sikat eh. Hindi naman talaga siya pinag-uusapan ng time nila. Hindi siya ganun ka-popular na poet. So, pinag-usap nila yung mga John, si John Donne, Johnson, si John Locke, si Milton. Sila yung mga pinag-uusapan eh. Sino ba tong Alexander Pope na to? Nadi-discriminate kasi siya kasi nga 'di ba sa physical features niya. Kaya nauunawaan ko yung pinanggagalingan nito eh. Kasi nga 'di ba yung doon pa lang sa judgment na sinasabi niya na kumbaga nai-reflect yun yung sarili niya doon sa literary criticism eh. Kung hihimayin natin, parang nare-reflect niya yung sarili niya na people are judging me because of who I am, because ganito yung itsura ko, ako ay hunchback, ako ay may sakit. People are judging me, 'di ba? Parang nadala niya ngayon tong it's only just my interpretation, it's only just my interpretation on where Alexander Pope is coming from. Kaya nadala niya 'to sa literature, dito sa kanyang essay on criticism, kaya hugot na hugot siya rito. So, another one is, people who are abundant will be the target of those who have not. Kapag marami ka, kapag hutok ka, syempre ikaw ang babato at babatin para ikay bumagsak. Okay? Next is wrong judgments. Na-mention na to kanina sa una, 'di ba, yung si judgment. Excuse me. A perfect judge will read each work of wit with the same spirit that its author right. So Pope compares the organic wholeness of a work of art to the wholeness of the body. So tiningnan niya ngayon yung pag hindi ko kasi na-incorporate na isama dito yung lines, napakahaba kasi. Pero kinumpara ni Alexander Pope ang isang sining or isang literature sa katawan ng tao, sa buong katawan ng tao. So, huhusgahan mo ba yung isang tao dahil lamang may a portion of his body is may deformity, just like him? Dahil ba ako'y hunchback, yung buong pagkatao ko na ba ay huhusgahan mo na. Okay? So, sabi niya, like an art, we should judge an art based on its wholeness, not because of single mistake that an art has. For him, that is a wrong judgment. If you judge a particular literary works or an art singly, ibig sabihin singly, yung isa lang, a portion of that literary works, dahil lamang mayroon siyang isang naisulat, yung buong literary works niya na ba, huhusgahan mo na rin yung pagbuong pagkatao niya. No, for Alexander Pope, it's not. Okay, so kasi nga 'di ba, where he's coming from based on my interpretation, yung physical deformities niya, 'di ba? Hinusgahan agad siya ng tao dahil hunchback nga siya. Okay, hindi siya makatayo ng ayos. Hinusgahan agad siya ng tao doon. And hindi na siya sinusuportahan dun sa kanyang mga ginawang literary works. Because hierarchical order of the parts in the whole is utmost importance in the attainment of aesthetic goal. So, yung buong literature ang dapat tinitingnan, hindi lang yung a portion of when making a judgment. By this manner, the critic can be successful in the judgment. Okay, so the more qualities and virtues inherent in the would-be critic. According kay Alexander Pope, ito dapat ang meron kayo in order for you to become a good critic. So, he mentioned in the final section of his poem about the moral qualities and virtues inherent in the ideal critic. So, although in our first discussion we already mentioned of the characteristic of a good critic, but since we're studying Pope, Alexander Pope, I will be mentioning to you the qualities of ideal critic according to Alexander Pope. So, ideal critic should be humble. According to him, a critic should always remember that humility is the most important virtue. He should be honest when he criticizes his friends or his enemies. Ayan. So, pag pangit, sabihin kong pangit, pero bigyan ng suggestion kung paano papagana. Just be honest. Or next, he should be objective because subjectivity is an obstacle to comprehend the poet's intention in the real sense of a work of art. Again, subjectivity cannot be avoided in every literary criticism. However, we can attain objectivity in our criticism when we are able to expound or to explain our criticism so that it will not be a wrong judgment. Okay? Pope believes that Aristotle's objective and flexible intelligence should be imitated to grasp the reality. Okay? With his objectivity, the critic, whether the poet of the work is his friend or his enemy, he should criticize his close friend and praise his enemy. Okay? Ayan. Criticize your close friend and praise your enemy. Then, the ideal critic should be witty, matalino, uh, educated. Pope emphasizes the importance of the wit, which is used 46 times in the poem and maybe the keyword of the poem, wit. So, kaya nga di ba nabanggit niya that education is very important if you really wanted to become a good critic. Education. So, part of that is being witty. The word wit in the age of neoclassicism has many meanings. It could be intelligence, modern sense of cleverness, the ability to produce a concise liveliness of mind, genius, and inventiveness. Ito yung ibig sabihin ng wit during the Neoclassicism period.